Hello everyone, welcome to our group presentation. Me and our team members will be talking about the topic of cryptography. We will have a basic introduction about cryptography and also discuss about the basic concept and different types of cryptographies in details. First, what is cryptography? If only from literal understanding, the prefix crypt comes from a Greek word means hidden or wall, and the suffix graphic stands for writing. Cryptography is a science method of protecting information and secure communication through the use of code, so that only the sender and intended recipient of the message to view its content. In computer science, cryptography refers to derived from mathematical concepts and a set of rule-based calculations called algorithms to transfer message in ways that are hard to decipher. Next, what is the history of cryptography? The origin of cryptography is usually dated from about 2000 BC with the Egyptian practice of hieroglyphics. This consists of complex pictograms, the full meaning of which was only known on elite field. Until 100 BC to 44 BC, the first known use of a modern cipher was by Julius Caesar. He did not trust his messengers when communicating with his governors and officers. For this reason, he created a system in which each character in his messages was replaced by a character 3 positions ahead of it in the Roman alphabet. And in nowadays, cryptography is used to secure all transmitted information in our IoT connected world, to authentic people to device and device to other device. If all of the cryptography engines or functions stop working for a day, modern life as we know it will stop. The use of cryptography is applied to anywhere as we know. For example, in government, cryptography was used primarily for military and diplomatic purposes. Government have a relative monopoly on cryptography expertise and capability as considered for the national security. For company, if you have a suite of company laptops or tablets to facilitate business travel or remote work arrangement, it is essential to encrypt the hard drives on every one of those devices if we want to maximize the information security. For education school, as we have known in our university, every student and professor have their personal account with password to access Canvas and school email. Even for the self-service account, which relates to some important private information, we have to get the permit through the app of Do Mobile to log in.
Hello everyone, my name is Bilal Mahmood and I will be going over the basic concept behind cryptography. While cryptography may be used in many areas of our daily lives, the concept of how it is done is a different matter that most day-to-day people don't think about. Engineers, on the other hand, have to understand how to decode and encode, encrypt and decrypt messages. When we say encoding messages, we refer to it as the process of putting a sequence of characters such as letters, numbers, and other special characters into a specialized format for efficient transmission. In much simpler terms, a message is created into a format for transportation efficiencies for computers. Decoding is the opposite, or the process of converting an encoded format back into the original sequence of characters. It is important to remember that when we encode and decode messages, it is not considered encryption or decryption. Encoding or decoding can often be seen or more understood when we talk about ASCII keys, as ASCII keys we are more familiar with as engineers. ASCII keys are a representation of numbers or letters in a format that computers more easily understand. Anything below 32 is represented as a hexadecimal for ease, and anything above the number 32 is represented in a format as percentage, number, letter, or vice versa. percentage letter number. So for example, number 91 on the ASCII key is the brackets, but is as represented as %5b. ASCII keys are used to convert computer language into human text or vice versa. It also creates a universal language for all computers to communicate with. Cryptography doesn't only deal with encoding or decoding of messages, but as well as encrypting and decrypting messages for secure communication. The reason for secure communication can be numerous reasons, like government, military, or if you want to send a personal message to your friends overseas or your family overseas. Encryption is the process in which data is converted into something that seems to be random and meaningless. Decryption is the process in which the encoded information is converted back to its original form. The definition was received from CryptoForge. The way encryption and decryption is done is through algorithms, which may be a cipher or a mathematical function or a number theory. When encrypting data, the algorithm will convert the message or plain text in terms of encryption into a protected information or a ciphertext in terms of encryption, which can be symbols or a code. Then a key or password is used to give access to the encrypted data. The receiver will have the key or the password and be given access so that it can be decrypted, or the data is decrypted. We refer to this whole process or the mathematical function used to decrypt or encrypt messages as a cryptographic algorithm. Now that we understand the basic concept behind cryptography, we will discuss the types of cryptography. Throughout time, cryptography has changed in numerous ways and has evolved substantially. The earliest evidence discovered of cryptography was when hieroglyphics existed, and the symbols used were understandable only by scribes. Nowadays, cryptography has advanced to becoming algorithms created from number theory, computational complexity theory, probability, and others. There are three major types of algorithms that we discuss, which are symmetric key algorithms and asymmetric key algorithms and hash functions. Symmetric key algorithms are how the name insinuates, due to the sender and the receiver using the same key to encrypt and decrypt the message sent. This algorithm will convert the message or the data into a secure message and make it difficult to access without the key. The key is sent to the receiver prior to the message arriving. Then on the receiver side, the key is used to decrypt the message. The advantage of this is the performance and the ease of the algorithm, and ease it brings to transporting messages from sender to receiver. Modern examples of algorithms that are symmetric key algorithms may include RC4, Quad, and others. With asymmetric key algorithms, we use different keys, public and private keys. The public key is, as the name implies, which anyone can have that wishes to encrypt a message. A private key is used by the receiver to decrypt the message. This may seem insecure by the way it sounds, but the way it works is that the sender will first obtain the public key of the receiver and encrypts the message with the receiver's public key. The receiver then uses its own private key to decrypt the message. If the private key is used to encrypt the message, the public key is used to decrypt the message. There is a public directory that has all the public keys, which are searched for the specific one that the message needs to be sent to. Some familiar protocols that use asymmetric key algorithms are SSL, which is Secure Sockets Layer, which allows HTTPS to be functional. This algorithm is considered to be the most secure because when users send message, they aren't required to use their private keys, leading to less chances of cyber attacks. Some common usages are in encrypted emails or nowadays with cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. Hash functions are more commonly known or used for check message integrity and authenticating information. In cryptography, hash functions aren't considered the most strongest of algorithms due to them being able to be opened in no time and the ease of being hacked. but they still hold their weight as not easily being decryptable. The reason they are used often is because they offer more efficient input and output. No two input hashes have the same output hash, which is also hidden and hard to determine which input has a specified output. They don't use keys like symmetric and asymmetric key algorithms either, but create a hash value. These values are then used to build up the key management and security services like generating random numbers, compression of data for verifying digital signatures, etc. Some common usages from large companies is password verification, signature generation, and verification.
Hi, my name is Jesse Kelly, and as my section of the presentation, I'll be covering public key encryption, RSA encryption, and what RSA stands for is the three names, Rivest, Shamir, and Edelman, and it's a public key crypto system that is used widely for data transmission and secure data transmission. So in regards to security, the whole point is so that if you're looking at some of these points that I have listed here, to send secure messages as well as being able to prevent unknown access to personal information and just being able to encrypt these keys while with using an algorithm and a key method. Okay, so on this slide, I'm going to go over that algorithm and the key method that I explained in the first slide and the meaning of that and why it's used. And so moving on with that, basically RSA derives its security from factoring large prime numbers, and then multiplying these numbers is easy, but determining the original prime numbers from the total or factoring is basically something that is infeasible due to the time it would take to calculate something so large. And so the public and private key algorithm is the most complex part of RSA cryptography. Basically, in order to break down these variables, it can be explained in two parts for the public key and the private key. And so the public key is so there's three variables, n, which would be the product of the really large prime numbers p and q, and then a derived number e from all three of those. And the public key consists of the modulus of n and a public exponent, which is e. That's why it's denoted e, which is normally set at a number, 65537, which is a prime number and not too large. But the E figure is noted that it doesn't have to be a secret selected prime number, as the public key is shared with everyone. So that's why it's a bit simpler than the private key. And then for the private key, it would consist of the modulus n and a private exponent d, which would be calculated using an extended Euclidean algorithm to find a multiplicative inverse with respect to n. And so basically, for a short example, if p were to equal 11 and q were to equal 13, then the product of that n would be 143. So that would just be one basic just assignment for the variables to kind of materialize that information. In terms of security, RSA security relies on the computational difficulty of actually factoring the large numbers and Basically, encryption strength is tied to key size, and doubling key length can deliver basically more possibilities and more overall security, because the more power that you have to process larger numbers leads to better security, which is the entire goal of RSA encryption to begin with. So as technology begins to increase year after year and get more, and hardware begins to get more and more powerful, larger and larger calculations and algorithms will be able to handle, and better security will come with that. So
Modern Cryptography Protocols: Fully Homomorphic Encryption by Carlos Gross Martinez. Fully homomorphic encryption, also known as FHE, is considered a new segment in the cryptographic field, which in its most basic notion, this cryptosystem main purpose is to deliver the ability to conduct calculations in data that is encrypted without the need to decrypt it before performing the desired operation. Rakursky delivers a touching remark on the system by conveying that this fully homomorphic encryption scheme, which is quite beautiful by itself, can actually be seen as just one phase of a really beautiful mathematical structure that can be used to achieve other exciting cryptographic goals. This mathematical structure, as defined by Rakursky, was first made possible in 2009 when the first operational scheme was introduced. After the initial introduction of this work, further development of the cryptosystem pioneered new techniques and architectures in order to increase its performance and still maintain the same level of security and privacy. Since this protocol is still considered to be fairly new, there is not a defined platform with defined rules describing the exact implementation of the protocol. Nevertheless, in an attempt to formally establish the standardization process, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, started a campaign giving the public the option to submit proposals for the standardization of the scheme. According to Player, and through the duration of this campaign, NIST had 69 submissions which they consider complete and proper in order to have a solid foundation in the different forms in which homomorphic encryption can take shape. Even though the application of this cryptographic approach is considered fairly new with its practical introduction with a little over a decade ago, the general idea of homomorphic cryptography has been around since 1978 when Adelmander, Troussos, and Rivest first introduced its conception. Nevertheless, it wasn't until 2009 from the introduction of this concept that Craig Gentry presents the first practical structure of this conception with the presentation of his PhD thesis titled A Fully Homomorphic Encryption Scheme. Gentry's homomorphic architecture is considered to be the first generation of FHE as a crypto system, and with this scheme, he eliminates the lingering uncertainty of a little over 3 decades on whether or not the solution to the idea of homomorphic encryption was possible. Gentry's next contribution to the crypto system is in the third generation FHE, where Gentry works with Sahai and Waters in order to introduce a new technique for building FHE schemes. This presentation will focus on the lattice-based encryption approach, which was the first methodology introduced by Craig Gentry. The lattice-based approach follows the learning with error assumption, which constructs a hard mathematical problem by adding noise to the system's architecture in order to distort the data's content. It is important to note that if the noise ratio in the system is too high, the data could be excessively distorted and therefore impossible to recover. On the other extreme, if the noise ratio in the system is too low, then the data can be easily decrypted. Finally, the popularity of this protocol has increased so much over time to where big tech companies like Microsoft have developed open source libraries for its implementation. Some of the libraries can be seen below. On this slide, we can see the protocol process of the first generation FHE broken into 3 different segments. The first segment of the process consists of encoding and sending the data by creating a public and private key, encrypting the encoded data with a private key, adding noise to the encrypted data, and broadcasting the public key. After this initial encryption of the data, the system is considered to be partially homomorphic. Once the data is transmitted, the server containing the function which needs to be computed performs a homomorphic evaluation on the encrypted data by running it through a special circuit which allows the desired function to be executed. The result is a variable possessing a bootstrap mechanism only decryptable with the private key of the sender of the data. After the completion of the circuit, the results are considered fully homomorphic since the results are also encrypted and sent back to the requester for decryption. The decryption process can be observed on the last column to the right. FHE advantages: outsourcing of computations, maintaining highest level of anonymity in the communications, a strong level of data security, and resistant to emerging cyber threats like quantum computing, abundant applications in different fields to include government, medicine, and many others. In conclusion, homomorphic cryptography continues to be a fast-developing segment in the cryptography field. The protocol itself has many important features which make its implementation very attractive in the sector. Industries like medicine, government, and science can easily find many situations in which implementing the cybersecurity scheme is not only practical but also necessary. Key features like data privacy and computational outsourcing makes homomorphic encryption a very appealing solution to implement, especially in current times when a lot of electronic devices used to keep everyone connected do not have the capacity to perform certain types of computations due to their hardware limitations.
Hello guys, my name is Danny. Today I'm going to be going over quantum computers and cryptography, otherwise known as quantum cryptography. Quantum computers use qubits instead of bits. Traditionally, bits use ones or zeros to represent whether or not a transistor is turned on or off. However, quantum computers use a direction instead of a 1 or a 0 to represent their values. This means there are infinite amount of possibilities that a qubit can be as a value. Quantum computers perform prime factorization extremely easy. Why is this a problem? Because most crypto systems are currently based off of prime factorization to protect your messages or data. Quantum computers therefore would be able to crack your private keys extremely easy. Why do we need to know about quantum computers now if they're not made yet, really? Or they have been made, but why should we know about them now if they're not commercial yet? It's because the switching to all quantum secure cryptography will take some time, so it's good if we start right now so that we're prepared once the technology launches. Okay, error correction codes. Now, I'm going to be going over error correction codes because this is going to tie into quantum cryptography later on. So, error correction codes are codes that are used to correct codes whenever data is being transmitted from one place to another. For example, the spaceship in this picture shows sending a message, and then the red one represents an error in that message. One way to fix this is you could send the messages 3 times. Therefore, if 1 or 2 of those copies of the message are corrupt, then you can correct them with one another and then fit the puzzle pieces together. Okay, so error correction encryption. Error correction encryption is a method of cryptography used to use error correction matrices to represent your public and private keys. So your private key is a good matrix, which means that it's able to find the original message using that matrix through matrix multiplication with a mix of 2 blend matrices. Now, why is this important? Because it produces a bad matrix. Your public key will be your bad matrix. Now, only the person who has the private key knows which 2 blend matrices were used to create the bad matrix. Therefore, it cannot be reverse engineered, and that's why it's your private key. Now, this bad matrix can be used to send messages to you using with errors, and then you can use the good matrix to find the original message in a feasible amount of time. Modern cryptography, or modern quantum computer cryptography, one of the methods currently being proposed is called BIKE. It's a post-quantum code-based error correction code-based cryptographic algorithm that provides a way to exchange data between two parties. Now, as I said earlier, BIKE is quantum resistant, which means that it may be one of the future protocols used once quantum computers are out. So essentially, as I showed in the last picture, we are in code-based cryptography, we are going to insert errors on purpose and then use matrices to correct those errors when sending messages in order to encrypt and decrypt the code. BIKE uses a similar function to create the private and public keys, except they use something called the generator matrix, but we aren't going to go into detail in this presentation. The reason this is quantum resistant is because there are bad and good matrices. Good matrices will give you the original message in a feasible amount of time, while bad matrices may take a century or longer, or decades, or it's unknown how long it will take to encrypt the message or decrypt the message. That's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching.